Alright, so we have a Toyota Camry 1999 going to replace the radio. I'm guessing the customer trying to do it himself because the dash is like you see. Carefully start to right out. Like you see, nothing is connected. I'm gonna take the 4 10mm. This is a regular Toyota 1761, no antenna adapter. We're good. We have the dash and the radio. Let's go to the bench and let's see what we want to do on this. Okay, so for this Toyota, we want to do the MVH23 NEX. You can say we want to use the Best Kits 1761. We don't have a dash kit because we're going to use the factory brackets for this. So let's go to the car and test how it's gonna fit. It looks good.
All right, and coming in at the end for some moral support, this guy.
Hello.
All right, so this one is done. We had to fix his cigarette lighter. He apparently is one of these guys that still wants to use one of these things here. Don't use these. These are not, the cars nowadays aren't made for these anymore, so stop. But he had a blown fuse, so in order to fix a blown fuse, he decided to replace the whole receptacle. Okay, whatever. This one is done. Awesome. On to the next one. All right, next up on the list is this Mercedes-Benz here. All we're doing is a simple radio swap out. What we want to talk about is we did a video a while back and we were showing you how to test to see if the German cars have the amplified antenna, and apparently it was like, whoa, hold on. We were just using a test light and everyone was like, what is that cool thing? And it's like, it's a test light. What we want to show you today is we're going to show you the same basic process we went through, but this time we're just going to show you with a multimeter so we can walk you through the basic process of how it works. We do have a video on this, by the way, that's just straight up all this stuff, but we know most of you guys are watching this now, so we're gonna go ahead and show you in this car here. So we're gonna go ahead and slide the radio out. To do that, we're gonna need these guys right here, little German key radio extraction tools. Let's head into the car. So the first thing we wanna do is just go ahead and pop them in until they clip. You should feel them clip. There we go. It slides right out. All right, so we'll go ahead and push the sides in to get your keys back out. All right, well, what we're gonna do is just gonna leave it like this, and I'm gonna go grab a digital multimeter. All right, so we wanna grab our digital multimeter, and we wanna set it to voltage DC, which is the V with the line and the dots. Now we're gonna go ahead and pull this guy out. What we wanna do is just unplug our antenna adapter first. Make sure the radio stays plugged in, which could be the chassis. The chassis of the radio is a great ground. See how this has this little pin right here in the center of it? Whether it's this type of connector or the one that is newer that looks like a Sirius XM style connector that just kind of clips in, it doesn't matter. Each one of them has a pin. It's just the new one is a much smaller version of this. And what we wanna do is meter that receptacle inside of the radio. So if we put this into this hole here and we go and turn on the radio, we can go ahead and plug this into the back here, and if we get a reading, which we're not, then we know it has an amplified antenna adapter, because what it's doing is it's not an amplified antenna, it's a relay that is turning on the car's factory amplifier for the antenna. So instead of, like, if we come over here, we're going to find a remote turn on or an amplified antenna turn on over here, the blue wire or the blue with the white stripe. It'll be over here in this harness here. What the car manufacturer is doing, instead of running that wire, that extra wire, they're actually putting it on the center pin of the antenna. So in this case, when we probe here, we can see that there again, there's nothing. All right, so if we come over to the main harness, right now the radio's off and you can see we have no voltage. We go ahead and turn the radio on. We're getting the turn on for that amplified antenna or amplifier. This is what we'd see if we were probing over here in the antenna. As we turned on and off the radio, we'd get that voltage reading on here. That's what you're testing for. So anytime you pull out these radios that have this or the newer one, this is for Volkswagen, Audi, BMW, Mercedes, any car that uses these style, that's how you find out if you need that cool antenna with the chrome tube and the way too big foam on it and the blue wire coming off. All right, now this has an amplifier in it. We could tell because, well, it's got this extra section right here. Now what we want to do is plug it in and see what is coming over that amplifier, because there might not actually be any sound coming over this, but chances are good there is. So let's go ahead. All right, so go ahead and unplug that. All right, so this top plug here, which is typically like the amplifier or the changer plug, in this case, it seems like it's just a changer plug. The other thing too is like this fiber optic cable right here. Obviously never probe a fiber optic cable, but don't assume just because there's a fiber optic cable behind the radio like this one, that that's controlling the audio going into the amplifiers. A lot of the cases, it isn't. In this particular case, this fiber optic was only for the CD changer. It doesn't even go to the amplifier. So what we know at this point is this is just a standard European plug. So now what we have to do is just go ahead, unplug it, wire up our harness, and put our new radio in. We've done all the testing we can. Testing is key on one of these to do before you remove the harness, because in a lot of these it'll come up with say code or password or some other silly thing like that once you pull the radio out of the dash. And if that's the case and you don't have it, you can't do any testing after that, obviously. So the radio we're going to put in this is a flip out 7800 Pioneer. Here's that harness I was trying. It's a 1784, you know, standard right here, no big deal. Comes with these two guys right here, which is the amplifier and the remote turn on. That was those things we were probing for to see which one it had when we were in the back of the radio. So we know it's going to need one of these. What I wanted to mention is when you're doing one of these flip outs or any radio that has all these pigtails hanging off the back, these things honestly are the most annoying things ever. Reason why is typically these have a cage, so when you're sliding them in, these love to get whacked off. Plus there's a ton of them. So what I like to do is break them into usable pairs. So for example, these are all the front rear sub. This is the aux in / rear monitor out. This is the backup camera and the AV input. This is just that high temp Tessa tape. When you're doing things like this seems to work better. You can also just use zip ties. The reason why I've moved from zip ties to this though is because of the little head on the zip tie. It always gets caught on some, kind of annoying, as Haley would say. We've talked about this before, red and yellow, constant 12 volts and accessory. They love to put these in backwards on these cars. You always want to test this to make sure that, you know, red is red and yellow is yellow. So I'm gonna go into the car real quick. Fun, this one doesn't even have the accessory wire in it. This one actually turns on via the car's computer. So, but we do have to move the constant 12 volts down. Now we just have to plug one of these in. The other thing that the car doesn't have, along with the red wire, is the orange illumination wire. The remote turn on wire it does need. What we're going to be looking at is black, remote turn on, blue, white, and then yellow. None of these others, even though there's a couple more wires in this harness and this power side, they're not going to be used for anything. And then of course we have our standard 8 speaker wires. At the cigarette lighter, right down here in the car, there is a accessory wire and an illumination wire. So we're gonna go ahead and tap those there to power up this radio. But for right now, we're gonna go ahead and get this harness built up and then we'll go back into the car. The wires we're trying to get are right here. They belong to this guy, which is the cigarette lighter plugged into the back right there. Now how this guy comes out, this is right here. You want to just pry this thing up. Okay, once this comes off, then this guy here, this just unsnaps. There's clips here, there's a couple clips here in the back. This just lifts right off. Now there's a Phillips here and a Phillips here. Put the gear shifter back. As you can see, we left the ESP switch plugged in. The other two switches are for the mirrors and the trunk pop. We don't need those, but we can just set this like this. Turn the key on, put this back, pull the pocket out. Now, once you unplug this, you can pull it up here into the radio cavity because it runs right here. I mean, you almost don't even need to pull this out because the harness is located right here. It's right there. And what you're looking for is a harness that has a black yellow, a brown, and then 2 gray purples. These guys right here, gray purples. The gray purple is your illumination. The black yellow is your accessory. So now we're gonna go ahead and put 2 pigtails here so that we can just plug in our radio. So the harness is all set and ready to go. We have our male ends here. So as you can see, these have no insulation on the tips. These are male. You put the female end in the car because those are gonna have power coming through them. So you wanna make sure you do that right, because if this end was in the car and this came unplugged and it touched, pow goes the fuse. So we can go ahead and plug this in now. All right, as we like to say, or as we just say, I don't know if we like to say it. Did you hear that? That was like a whisper. Show some balls, man. Next car on the list, what is this?
Dodge Durango.
There you go. We're going to put a double din in this. So if you have one of these Dodge Durangos, let me take a look at the radio. So this has this silly guy right here with these, we call them Mickey Mouse ears because I'm a fan of Mickey Mouse. But the main problem is that this is too short to fit a double din. It's not tall enough. It needs to be bigger. We have to trim this. In order to make that happen, Metra makes a dash kit, the 956533B. Now what the kit comes with is this right here. And what this is designed to do is fill the void where the little Mickey Mouse ears are. In the kit, it comes with this guy right here. What this is used for is to cut the factory kit. This is a template. These are going to hold this in place, but this is going to snap into the back of the radio, and we're actually going to use this to trace out where we need to cut. And then of course it comes with two little brackets that are going to mount it into the dash. You also have to cut behind the dash. Once we get this out, we'll go ahead and take a look at the dash and see what part we have to remove there. So we have the trim bezel here. And now what this is designed to do is sit like this and cover those holes. But as you can see, this is too short, like we said. So now we're gonna go ahead and flip it over. Take our cool guide here. You can see there's a square and a circle. They're gonna match up to this square and this circle here. Rectangle, my bad. Get yourself a bright Sharpie. And now we need to cut this shape out of here. For that, we're gonna use our grinder. As you saw, you just constantly want to test fit it to make sure. On the top here, you have to add in these notches because that's going to line up with the top of the kit. Once you finally got it to where it goes in, no problem. And you have equal gapping here and here. What you need to do is just take these guys, and these are going to sit over it just like this. And then it comes with 4 screws. All right, and there we go. So now we have a double din spot there. It's covered up the silly Mickey Mouse ears. We can get on to the next part of it. Now behind the radio, it has this. This is what holds the radio in place. And your double din radio, as you can see, really doesn't want to fit in here. It's getting caught up. At the end of the day, you just need this here and this here. This is what is going to hold the radio in place. We're just going to cut these off. We're just going to take it over the saw and cut both these wings off of here. All right, so now we have these guys all set up here. Driver, passenger. We have these that we have that are going to attach into these like this and screw to the side of the radio. So I'm going to go ahead and give this stuff to Fernando so that he can get these lined up while I work on the harness. It's a 4. Brief interruption here. I said I was just getting ready to start on the wiring harness. I gave the kit to Fernando to go ahead and line up. He ran into an issue. Let's go back over to the bench. As you can see, I have this sitting on my bench again. He's gonna be doing the wiring harness because we have this thing to look at. Ugh, so frustrating. We've talked about this issue before, how that when you do the 6.2-inch screens, they've decided to make these screens sit really flush with the radio. They only stick out less than 1/8 of an inch. Well, the problem we run into now is like if you set this kit on it like this, it actually looks pretty good. This kit was designed around you having a 1/2 inch movable face, or this sticking out at least 1/4 of an inch. Well, they don't do that. So now when you put this all on here and line this up, this thing sits in the dash and it looks terrible. But what we need to do is make this radio so that it can actually slide all the way through this hole so that it can then rest up against this kit in the dash, and then it'll look good. In order to do that, what we now have to do is we have to go in and we have to remove this whole area here and here. We're just going to cut it right here, and then we have to come down here and do the same thing. Move these in 1/8 of an inch so that this is wider, so that this guy here will move freely all the way up into the kit. So now we're going to take this into the car and make sure this fits. Well, that looks much better. All right, this one is done. On to the next one. So every now and then we get cars in the install bay like this Chevy truck right here that we don't film because they're just in for a quote, meaning they want us to go through it, figure out what's wrong with it, and then go from there. And the reason why I'm filming this is because it's really kind of annoying. This one, you know, he came in and he was like, my radio doesn't work. I want to put this new used radio in it. And I was like, okay, let's take a look at it. This is what we saw. Now this is a Kenwood radio. This radio works fine. The problem is that harness is cut. Those two purple wires right there, those are data wires. They didn't use the smart harness. They also only ran a single RCA for this 4-channel amplifier. There's some Y jacks buried up underneath that they screwed the amplifier on top of. And of course he wanted to take out his nice Kenwood because it wasn't turning on and put this Jensen in. Talk about making bad things worse. Where we're at this is trying to figure out what to do. First thing we'd have to do is solder this harness back together. Then we'd have to put in the smart harness. Now, of course, he paid to have this done. He had this done professionally. And this is why I understand why you guys, you know, I understand. I know why you watch this, and I know why you guys do this stuff by yourself, because he paid for this. And he was took. He was straight up took. We have a dealer in our area that, you know, he preys upon a certain group of people, and yeah, he takes them for all he can get, because they feel helpless about it, and they feel they have trust for him. It's not warranted. It's just discouraging. It's things like this that just make it bad for everybody. Oh well. Well, we're not filming this yet because I don't know if this is just a quote, like I said. If we see it in the later video, cool. If not, but as I like to say, on to the next one.